I was 25 years old when the doorbell rang that morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. I was just finishing breakfast and getting ready for work. When I walked to the door, I felt completely normal, but when I opened it, my whole world stopped for a moment. Standing on my front porch was a face I hadn't seen in 12 long years. It was my dad. I froze. For a second, I couldn't move or speak. The last time I saw him, I was 13 years old. I remembered my mom crying. I remembered yelling. I remembered seeing him pack his bags and slam the door behind him. After that, he disappeared like a shadow that never came back. And now, here he was, older, thinner, and standing right in front of me. My chest tightened. I felt a mix of emotions, confusion, anger, fear, sadness, all fighting inside me. I expected him to come with excuses. I expected him to say something like, "I'm sorry I left," or "Life was hard." That was what I imagined for years. I expected him to blame someone else or pretend everything was okay, but he didn't. He held a stack of papers in his hands. His eyes looked tired, not angry. His voice was soft when he finally spoke. "Ethan," he said quietly, like the name felt heavy in his mouth. "I paid every month." I blinked. I didn't understand. Paid what? Paid who? Paid why? My brain couldn't catch up to his words. I stepped aside and let him inside because my legs felt weak. He walked slowly, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be in my home. We sat at the table. He placed the papers gently in front of me. His hand shook slightly, like he was nervous. My heart thudded loudly as I looked down at the stack. The top page was a receipt. Then another. Then another. Dozens of them. I finally picked one up and read the words. Child support payment received. Right under those words was a signature. I knew that handwriting instantly. I had seen it on school forms, birthday cards, doctor notes, and permission slips. It was my mother's handwriting. I felt my stomach flip so fast I thought I might get sick. I looked at the next page. Same thing. The next one. Same. Every page said he paid money. Every page had her signature. Every page showed a date I remembered from my childhood. Birthdays, holidays, school years. I felt the room tilt for a second. My mom told me for years that my dad didn't care. She told me he never paid a single dollar. She told me he walked out and never looked back. She told me he left us with nothing. She told me he abandoned me. She told me he was the reason we struggled. But the papers in front of me told a different story. My dad had paid every month, for 12 years, on time, without fail, and my mother signed for every single payment. My breath grew tight. I didn't know if I wanted to cry or scream. My dad looked down at the table like he was ashamed of something he didn't even do. I stared at him, then stared at the stack of receipts again, trying to understand how something this big had been hidden from me. All those years, I hated him. All those years, I thought he abandoned me. All those years, I believed her words. And now the truth was sitting right on my kitchen table. My mom didn't just lie. She stole 12 years of child support and blamed my dad for being gone. After my dad left the receipts on my kitchen table, I just sat there staring at them. My mind felt scrambled, like someone had taken all my memories and shaken them like a snow globe. The words on the pages were clear, but my heart couldn't accept them. Because all my life, I had grown up with a completely different story. A story my mom told me over and over until I believed every part of it. When I was little, Mom used to sit beside me and say, "Your father abandoned us." She said it with such a sad voice that I believed her right away. I thought my dad left because he didn't want me. I never questioned it. I was too young to understand anything else. Her voice made it seem like the truth. Whenever money was tight or bills were late, Mom would sigh loudly and say, "He never paid a dime." She would shake her head and sometimes even cry. I used to feel angry at my dad for making us struggle. I thought he was selfish. I thought he didn't care how hard things were. My mom made it sound like she had to carry everything alone. She repeated the same story during every fight, every hard month, every sad moment. "I raised you alone," she would say, and I believed her because I saw no one else in the house. It looked true. It sounded true. And as a kid, what else was I supposed to think? I didn't know she was hiding something. Whenever I asked what happened between them, she always told me, "He chose his new family over you." Those words hurt the most. They felt like knives. I would lie awake at night thinking about a family I had never seen. A family that replaced me. A family he loved more. I pictured them laughing together without me. I pictured him forgetting I existed. And because of those stories, I grew up hating him. Every birthday, I waited for him to show up. I sat by the window, watching the street. Mom would stand behind me and whisper, "Don't hope too much. He never comes." And when he didn't, she would say, "See? He doesn't care. I felt my chest break a little more each year. Every holiday, I expected him to knock on the door. He never did. Mom always said, "He didn't even send a card. What kind of father is that?" I didn't know the truth. I didn't know those receipts existed. I only knew the story she fed me again and again. Every school event, I looked for him. At concerts, at sports days, at award nights. He never came through the door. Mom would shake her head and say, "I told you, he's not worth your tears." And I cried anyway, thinking I didn't matter to him. But now, with every receipt sitting in front of me, I saw something I never expected. He had cared. He had shown up in the only way he was allowed. He had paid for 12 years, every month, without failing. He had tried to do right by me. It was just hidden behind my mother's lies. My stomach twisted as I picked up one of the papers. Her signature stared back at me like a ghost from the past. All those years, she took the money. She collected every payment, she kept every dollar, and then she told me he gave nothing. My childhood wasn't broken because of my dad. My childhood pain was built on her lie. And now that I knew the truth, the past felt completely different. Like someone turned on a light in a room I didn't know was dark. My dad sat across from me at my kitchen table. His hands looked older than I remembered, shaky, tired, and lined with years of work. He reached into his bag and pulled out another stack of papers. "There's more," he said quietly. I didn't know what else there could be. The first stack had already changed everything I believed about my childhood. But he slid the papers toward me slowly, like he didn't want to scare me. I picked up the top sheet. It was a list, a simple list. But the numbers on it made my throat tighten. At the top it said $650 every month, and underneath that it showed those payments repeated over and over for 12 years. Rows and rows of the same number printed neatly with dates beside them. Dates from when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. Each line proved something I never knew. Each line was a piece of a truth that had been hidden from me. Each line made my heart feel heavier. I looked at the bottom of the sheet. There was a total printed in bold letters, $93,600. I whispered the number out loud because my brain couldn't believe it. Almost $100,000. That was more than I made in 2 years of working full-time. That was more than enough to help raise a kid. That was more than enough to fix a car, pay rent, buy clothes, cover school needs, and keep food in the fridge. My dad spoke softly. "It was all paid," he said. "Every single month. I never missed one." I stared at the list again. Paid, completed, recorded. And suddenly memories from my childhood rushed back all at once, and they didn't match these papers at all. I remembered wearing thrift store shoes that were too tight. I remembered asking Mom if I could get new ones and her saying, "We don't have the money." I remembered skipping school field trips because we couldn't afford the fee. Everyone else had backpacks with cartoon characters or cool designs. Mine was plain and secondhand, with a zipper that always got stuck. I remembered being 14 and getting my first job bagging groceries after school. Mom told me, "If you want to help, you can put some money toward rent." So I did. Every week. I gave her part of every paycheck, thinking we were struggling because Dad never paid anything. But now, looking at the list in my hands, I knew that wasn't true at all. My dad had paid. He paid on time. He paid every month. He paid almost $100,000. So where did all that money go? I asked him slowly. "Dad, did you ever ask Mom how she used the money?" He nodded sadly. "She told me you needed things. She said she was taking care of everything." My stomach twisted. Taking care of everything? I remembered nights eating cheap noodles for dinner. I remembered Mom crying because the power bill was late. I remembered her saying we couldn't afford birthday parties or vacations. I remembered working weekends to help keep us afloat. But if Dad was sending $650 a month, why did our life look nothing like it? I stared hard at the papers. The numbers blurred as my eyes stung. I couldn't understand how one person could hide something this big. I couldn't understand how a mother could take money meant for her child and still tell that child they were broke. My voice shook as I whispered, "Dad, I never saw any of this." He nodded, eyes wet. "I know, son. That's why I came. You deserved the truth." I set the papers down slowly. Everything I thought I knew about my childhood, every sad moment, every struggle, every time I blamed my dad, was built on a lie that someone else carefully created. And now the truth was sitting on my table, and I had no idea where all that money had gone. My dad sat very still across from me, like he was afraid one wrong move would make everything fall apart again. His hands were shaking. His eyes looked red, like he hadn't slept. I could tell he had been waiting years to say something, but the words were stuck in his throat. I didn't rush him. I just sat quietly and waited, even though my heart was beating fast in my chest. Finally, he took a slow breath and swallowed hard. "Ethan," he said softly, "there's something else you need to know." His voice sounded nervous, like he was scared I wouldn't believe him. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I was ready for more. After all the lies I had already uncovered, I didn't know how much worse the truth could get. He reached into his folder again and pulled out a different set of papers. These weren't receipts. They were longer, thicker, printed with legal headings. "These are court papers," he said. "Your mother told the court that you never got the money." I felt my breath catch. My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though part of me already understood. My dad slid the first page toward me. At the top, it said custody review. Under that, it listed the reason for the request: non-payment of child support. The date on the paper was from when I was 8 years old. I stared at the page, confused. I remembered that year. We moved to a smaller apartment. Mom said it was because Dad refused to help, but the receipts showed he had paid every month. Dad pointed to a line in the paper. "She told the judge I had stopped paying," he said quietly. "She said she needed more support, more help, more benefits, because I abandoned you." I looked at him. His eyes were watery. His jaw was tight, like saying those words hurt him. I picked up the next paper. It said almost the same thing. She had filed again when I was 10, again when I was 11, again when I was 12. Each time she wrote statements saying, "He never pays anything. He left his son behind. He does not care." Seeing her words on paper felt like someone punched me in the chest. I whispered, "Dad, why didn't you show me this before?" His shoulders dropped. "Because I didn't want you to hate your mother," he said. "I didn't want to make you choose. I thought maybe she would stop." But she didn't stop. She kept filing those papers for years, even when she had already cashed the checks. I flipped to the next document. It was a bank statement from Dad's account. Line after line showed the same thing: child support transfer. Cleared. The dates matched the court papers exactly. While she told the court he never paid, the bank showed she cashed every dollar. My chest felt tight, like the room was shrinking. I remembered all those times Mom cried, telling me we were alone. I remembered her saying, "He never even tries." But the papers in my hands told a different story. He had tried every month. She just hid it. I stared at the signatures at the bottom of the receipts. Her handwriting, clear as day. The same handwriting she used on my school notes and grocery lists. She signed every payment. She collected every check. Then she stood in court and said she got nothing. My dad looked down at the table. "I didn't want to show you this," he whispered, "but you deserve the truth." I nodded slowly, even though it hurt. My whole childhood was built on a lie she repeated over and over, and I believed her every time. She didn't just lie to me. She lied to the court. She lied to the world. And she lied while cashing every single check. The truth sat between us on the table, heavy and painful. She betrayed both of us. I drove to my mother's house with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I could barely breathe. The folder of receipts sat in the passenger seat beside me, like a giant weight pressing down on my chest. Every few minutes I glanced at it, almost wishing the papers would disappear. Because as long as I held them, I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. The truth was already out of its hiding place. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it did when I was a kid. Same windows, same little porch, same flowers growing beside the steps. It felt strange walking up to that door with a completely different understanding of my childhood. I knocked, even though I used to walk in without thinking. This time, I needed a barrier. Mom opened the door with a bright smile. "Ethan," she said happily, like everything was perfect and normal. She reached out for a hug, but I didn't move. Her smile faded just a little when she noticed my face, but she still tried to keep her voice cheerful. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I stepped past her and walked straight to the kitchen table. My legs felt weak. My stomach felt sick. I placed the stack of receipts, court papers, and bank statements on the table. They made a loud thump when they landed. Mom's smile dropped instantly, like someone switched off a light. She stared at the papers, not like she didn't recognize them, but like she wished they would disappear. Her face went pale. She didn't blink. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, "You weren't supposed to know." The room felt like it spun. My knees nearly gave out. I grabbed the back of a chair to keep myself standing. I sat down slowly and pushed the papers toward her. "You told me he never paid," I said. My voice cracked. It didn't sound angry. It sounded hurt, like a little kid still living inside me was asking the question. Mom didn't deny it. She didn't pretend. She just looked away and said, "Ethan, you were a child. It was easier that way." Easier. My heart tightened so much I thought it might break. Easier for who? Easier for her? Easier for her story? Easier for her to stay angry at him? It certainly wasn't easier for me. It wasn't easier when I cried on my birthday waiting for a dad I thought didn't love me. It wasn't easier when mom said he chose someone else. It wasn't easier when I blamed myself for not being good enough. And it definitely wasn't easier when I grew up believing half of myself was worthless. I took a deep breath because I could feel tears building in my eyes. I didn't want to cry in front of her, not after everything I knew now. "You made me hate him," I said. "You told me he didn't care. You told me he left because he didn't love me." Mom pressed her hands to her face. "I was hurting," she said. "I didn't know how to tell you the truth." Her voice shook, but her words didn't land gently. They felt like sharp stones thrown at old wounds. I shook my head. "But you didn't just hide the truth," I said softly. "You took the money, all of it, and you let me think we were poor because of him." My voice broke again. "You made me get a job at 14. You made me believe we were barely surviving." Her shoulders dropped. She whispered, "I needed the money." She didn't say for what. She didn't explain where it went. She didn't say sorry. She just said she needed it. Like that made everything okay. The clock on the wall ticked loudly as we sat in silence. My childhood memories suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle that had been put together wrong on purpose. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and realized something painful. My mother didn't just lie to protect me. She lied to protect her story. She lied to keep control. She lied even when it broke her own son. Sitting at that kitchen table, it felt like someone had died. But it wasn't a person. It was the version of my childhood I had believed my whole life. I sat across from my mother at the kitchen table, the same table where I once did homework and ate cereal before school. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a courtroom, and she was the only one holding answers. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to look her in the eyes. "I want to know where the money went," I said slowly. "All of it." Mom looked away. She stared at the wall like the paint was suddenly very interesting. "Ethan," she whispered, "it went to bills." I waited. She added, "And groceries." I waited again, then she said, "Life was hard." Her voice was soft, but it didn't match the numbers in my mind. $93,600. Almost $100,000. That wasn't grocery money. That wasn't a few bills. That wasn't life was hard. That was a life-changing amount of money. I leaned forward. "What bills?" I asked. "What groceries? What things?" She didn't answer right away. She just rubbed her forehead like she was trying to erase the memory of what she spent. She finally said, "You needed things, school things, clothes, food, all kinds of things." But I remembered the truth too clearly. I remembered the nights when the electricity shut off because the bill wasn't paid. I remembered us lighting candles in the living room. I remembered Mom yelling on the phone about past due notices. It never looked like we had extra money. I remembered we lived paycheck to paycheck. I remembered Mom saying we couldn't buy new shoes until the next month. I remembered wearing jeans 2 years in a row, even when the knees had holes. Dad's payments should have helped. They should have made things easier. But our life looked nothing like a home filled with support money. I took a deep breath and asked again, "Where did it go? Really go?" She froze, completely still. Then she sighed. "Some of it," she said, "went to help your uncle." I blinked. My uncle? The one who always borrowed money and never paid it back? The one who always made trouble? Mom nodded like this was a good reason. "And some of it," she continued, "went to your grandmother." I pressed my lips together. My grandmother had medical bills sometimes, but Dad's money was supposed to be for me, not for everyone else. Mom kept talking, but her voice grew quieter. "And some," she looked down at her hands. "Some, I just needed." I sat back in my chair. Those 3 words felt like a punch to the chest. I just needed. Needed for what? Needed for who? Needed because of what choices? She needed money. She needed support. She needed help. But she took it from her own child's future, while telling that same child they were poor because of his father. My head felt heavy. I tried to think clearly. "Mom," I said slowly, "you needed $93,600. For what?" She didn't answer. She didn't look up. She didn't explain. Her silence said everything she wouldn't. I remembered the time I asked why we couldn't afford new school supplies. She said, "We don't have help." But she had help. I remembered the time I worked at 14 to help pay rent. She said, "We need your part." But she had money. I remembered every birthday she said, "Your father doesn't care." But he had cared. I looked at her shaking hands and realized something hard but true. It wasn't about what she needed. It was about what she wanted. It was about control. It was about keeping the story alive. It was about hiding the truth, even from her own son. And sitting there in that quiet kitchen, I felt something break inside me. Not out of anger, but out of heartbreak. She didn't just spend the money. She spent 12 years of my childhood believing a lie she created. I sat at the kitchen table, feeling like the floor beneath me wasn't real anymore. The house looked the same as it always had. The same fridge, the same old clock on the wall, the same curtains I remembered from childhood, but nothing felt familiar. Nothing felt safe. I kept looking at my mother, hoping she would give me some reason that made sense, some explanation that didn't hurt. But all she did was cross her arms tightly against her chest, like she was protecting herself instead of facing the truth. She looked away from me and said in a cold, sharp voice, "He hurt me. I deserved something." I blinked. Her words didn't feel real at first. I repeated them in my head to make sure I heard right. She wasn't talking about bills anymore. She wasn't talking about groceries or rent or school needs. She wasn't even pretending the money was for our home. She was talking about her pain, her anger, her old memories, and somehow, in her mind, that gave her permission to take everything Dad sent for me. I stared at her, trying to understand. "So, you punished him by taking the money?" I asked slowly. She didn't answer. She didn't nod. She didn't deny it. But her silence said it all. She thought what she did was fair. She thought taking child support was some kind of prize for being hurt long ago. The more I thought about it, the more my chest tightened. My mother didn't just take from my father. She took from me. She took money that was meant to help me grow, help me succeed, help me feel cared for. She didn't just punish him. She punished me. With lies, with struggle, with years of confusion. I thought back to all the times she told me we were poor because of him. All the nights she cried and said he didn't care. All the times she made me feel unwanted. It wasn't just a lie to the court. It was a lie to her own child. A lie she told me over and over until it became part of who I believed I was. "So you punished my father," I said quietly, "by stealing from me." The words felt heavy in my throat. She looked up for a moment, like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Her eyes shifted away again. She couldn't deny what she'd done. "And you punished me," I added, "by stealing from him." My voice cracked. I felt like that 7-year-old kid again, the one who waited by the window for a dad who never walked up the driveway. I remembered birthdays where she wiped my tears and said, "He doesn't love you." I remembered school halls where I felt like the only kid whose dad never showed up. I remembered wondering why he didn't want me. I had been living in the middle of a war I didn't know existed, a war between two adults with bruised hearts and hurt feelings, a war I never signed up for, a war I didn't understand, but I was the target anyway. "I was the one stuck between you two," I said, my voice soft but shaking. "I was the battlefield." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She just folded her arms tighter, holding on to her anger like it was the only thing keeping her standing. For 12 years, she used her hurt as a shield. For 12 years, she used me as a weapon. For 12 years, she let me grow up believing I wasn't worth my father's love. I looked at the stack of papers again, receipts, court reports, bank statements, all proving the truth she never wanted me to know. And for the first time in my life, I finally understood something painful and clear. I wasn't just the child in the story. I was the battlefield they fought on. I was the place their anger landed. I was the one who paid for a war that never belonged to me. And that realization hurt more than anything she ever said. When I walked out of my mother's house, the air felt thick and heavy, like it didn't want to let me breathe. My chest hurt, my hands shook, my eyes burned. I stepped off the porch and onto the grass, and suddenly my stomach twisted so hard that I bent over and threw up. I couldn't stop it. My whole body felt like it was breaking apart piece by piece. For years, I had carried anger. Anger toward my dad. Anger toward the man I thought had vanished from my life. Anger toward someone I believed walked away without looking back. But now, all that anger flipped like a table being turned over. Everything I thought I knew felt wrong. And the worst part? I didn't know who I was supposed to be mad at anymore. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and sat down on the steps. My legs felt weak. My heart felt sore, like it had been stepped on. I closed my eyes and said the words I never thought I would say in my life. My dad didn't abandon me. I said it again, slower this time, trying to make sense of it. He didn't leave because he didn't love me. He didn't stay away because he didn't care. He didn't disappear because he forgot I existed. He stayed away because my mother lied. She lied to me, she lied to the court, she lied to him, she lied to everyone. My mom didn't just hide child support money, she hid a whole piece of my life. She took the truth and stuffed it into a dark corner where I would never find it. But now it was out, and it hurt worse than anything I had ever felt. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. At first, I didn't know what I was going to say. My thumb hovered over my dad's number. I felt scared, not of him, but of the truth, of facing everything I had gotten wrong for so many years. But I pressed the call button anyway. He picked up on the second ring. "Ethan?" he said, surprised. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. My eyes filled. And then the tears came all at once. I cried so hard, I could barely breathe. I cried for the birthdays I thought he missed. I cried for the holidays I thought he ignored. I cried for every school event where I believed he chose not to show up. I cried for the childhood I lost because of a lie someone chose to tell. My dad didn't say anything at first. He just listened. And then I heard him cry too. His voice cracked. He sniffed loudly. And I realized something I never expected. We were both grieving the same childhood, just from different sides. He cried because he lost years with me. I cried because I lost years with him. Both of us were hurting over something that didn't have to happen. Both of us were wounded by the same lie. Both of us were robbed of moments we could never get back. Two grown men, one sitting on a porch, one holding a phone miles away, crying for a bond that had been broken long ago, not by distance, not by choice, but by lies. My dad said softly, "Ethan, I wanted to be there. I tried. I really tried." And I whispered back, "I know. I know now." Saying those words felt like opening a heavy door I didn't know I had been carrying inside me. For the first time in my life, we were finally on the same side of the truth. For the first time, we weren't strangers. For the first time, we understood each other's pain. And as we cried together on the phone, I realized something awful and clear. Our childhood connection wasn't lost. It was stolen. When the truth finally came out, it didn't stay quiet for long. I didn't spread it myself. I didn't run around telling everyone. But lies have a way of cracking open, and once they crack, they break fast. Within a few days, the news began moving through the family like a storm rolling through a small town. People called, people whispered, people asked questions Mom never wanted anyone to hear. The first person to hear the truth was my grandmother. She always loved me, and she always asked about my dad. She used to say, "He was a good boy once." When she saw the receipts and the court papers, her face went pale. She covered her mouth with her hand. Then her knees shook, and she actually fainted. My aunt had to catch her. Later, she woke up crying, saying, "All those years, we blamed the wrong person." Her sadness filled the whole living room like a heavy fog. My uncle reacted differently. When he heard that Mom had taken child support money and given some of it to him, he didn't apologize. He didn't look upset. He just shrugged and said, "Your mom helped because she wanted to." Then he added excuses about being broke and needing help. None of his excuses explained why he took money meant for me. None of them explained why he never asked where the money came from. It didn't matter to him. He cared more about being helped than about who got hurt. Mom's reaction was the loudest. When she realized people were finding out, she completely lost control. She screamed at me, her face turning red, her hands shaking. "You betrayed me," she shouted. "How dare you share our private business?" But I never shared anything. The truth came out because it was too big to hide anymore. Still, Mom pointed her finger at me like I was the one who did something wrong. Her voice hurt my ears, but her words hurt my heart more. Dad stayed quiet, but he took action. He went straight to the courthouse and filed to clear his record. For years, he looked like a father who didn't care. Now he had proof to show the world that he never abandoned me, never skipped payments, never forgot me. Watching him take those steps made my chest ache, because none of it should have been necessary. He should have been able to be my dad without fighting through lies. A few days later, Mom came to my apartment. She didn't knock loudly. She didn't shout. She stood in the hallway looking small and tired. Her eyes were red. She said softly, "Ethan, please don't tell people. You'll ruin me." She said, "Ruin me," like she was the victim. Like she was the one who needed protection. Like she didn't understand the damage she caused. I looked at her for a long moment. My childhood flashed through my mind. My empty birthdays, my painful holidays, my years of anger at a father who didn't deserve it, and my years of sadness thinking I wasn't loved. All of it caused not by him, but by her choices. I finally said, in a calm voice, "You ruined me first." Her eyes filled with tears. She reached for my arm. "Ethan, please," she whispered. But I stepped back. I couldn't carry her lies anymore. I couldn't protect her from the truth she created. I couldn't heal her by hurting myself again. I turned around. I opened my apartment door. I walked inside, and I didn't look back. Because fixing the past wasn't my job. Protecting my future was. Life felt different after everything came out. It didn't fix itself in one day. It didn't suddenly become perfect. But something inside me changed. Something heavy that I had carried since childhood finally began to fade. The lies were gone. The truth was out. And I could finally breathe without feeling someone else's anger sitting on my chest. My father and I started meeting every Sunday. Not once a month, not once in a while, every single Sunday. We sat at the same small cafe each time. He always ordered coffee, and I always ordered hot chocolate, just like I did when I was little. At first, our conversations felt slow and careful, like we were learning to speak a new language together. But each week, we grew a little more comfortable, a little more open, a little more connected. We talked, we rebuilt, we healed. He told me stories about when I was little, things I didn't remember. He told me how he saved my drawings for years, how he kept my old birthday cards, how he waited outside school plays, hoping Mom would let him inside. Sometimes he cried when he talked, sometimes I cried too. It wasn't easy, but it felt real. It felt honest. It felt like the beginning of something we both needed. But healing didn't come from Dad alone. It also came from choosing what voices I allowed into my life. Mom still tried to message me. She sent long texts and short ones. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes she blamed me. Sometimes she pretended nothing happened. But the message she sent the most said, "I'm your mother. You owe me forgiveness." That message sat in my phone like a sharp stone. I read it once, then twice, then I closed my eyes. Forgiveness didn't work the way she thought. Forgiveness wasn't a prize. It wasn't something she could demand. It wasn't something I owed her because of a title. Forgiveness is something a person earns by being honest, being kind, and being willing to repair what they broke, and she never earned it. I didn't block her. I didn't scream at her. I didn't fight anymore. I just didn't answer. Because answering meant stepping back into a story that wasn't mine. A story built on lies, guilt, and secrets. A story where I was the child who never knew the truth. My family wasn't destroyed when I discovered the truth. It wasn't destroyed when Dad knocked on my door. It wasn't destroyed when I found the receipts. It wasn't destroyed when the court papers came out. It was destroyed years ago, quietly, silently, when the person raising me decided that money mattered more than honesty. When she chose anger over truth. When she chose lies over love. When she chose control over connection. I didn't ruin the family. I just uncovered what was already broken. And now I'm done living in her version of the story. Her version where she was the hero. Her version where Dad was the villain. Her version where I was the child who didn't deserve answers. This time, I write the truth myself. The truth where my dad didn't abandon me. The truth where I wasn't forgotten. The truth where I get to choose who I become. The truth where honesty matters more than blame. The truth where I build something better. With love, with clarity, with real healing. I don't know what the future looks like yet, but for the first time in my life, it's a future that belongs to me. A future not shaped by lies, but by truth. And this time, I choose the ending.